Hello everybody, and welcome to my channel, my room. It's been a while. I think the last video I did was prior to the holidays, so sorry about that, but you guys know me. Life happens. But I appreciate you all here. So this is continuing in my series of my thoughts on Beatles U.S. albums and going back with the U.S. albums vinyl reissues in mono that came out towards the end of last year. My lovely mom got me this as a Christmas gift this year. So this is the original motion picture soundtrack to A Hard Day's Night. And there's the back cover. As you know, this did not come out by Capitol. This came out on the United Artists record label, the movie studio United Artists, which exists in name only nowadays. They had their own record label as well. And they had a number of artists, instrumental artists. I mean, really, if you were a fan of the Muzak instrumental recordings of Ferrante and Teacher, I think I'm pronouncing their names correctly. My grandparents had an album of theirs. They were very popular on United Artists, but they also had released a lot of soundtracks to their movies. And in England, the official album, the official UK album, and the way the Beatles had wanted it, etc., was the way it was in England. That was a 13-track album, side 1, 7 songs from the movie, side 2, additional songs that were recorded on the same time frame. And I've stated this, and thank goodness I found I'm not the only one. To me, the first real slam bang masterpiece in the Beatles catalog is the UK A Hard Day's Night album. 13 killer tracks, all killer, no filler. Every song is a Lennon and McCartney original. You can't go wrong with that album. There's no conceptual anything like Sgt. Pepper or anything like that. It's just good, honest to goodness, rock and pop tunes. Beatles classics, every single one. Not a bad track among them. But in America, part of the deal for doing a Beatles movie with United Artists was the fact that United Artists would get a soundtrack album out of it. That was the main reason. By the time they greenlit the movie, the Beatles were a big deal, and United Artists said, do we get a soundtrack album out of this for our soundtrack division? Now, Capitol did release their version called Something New, and I'll talk about that in my next video, but this was the official soundtrack. This is how US fans heard this album. Unless you also had Something New, then you pretty much got everything that was on the UK album. But this was the album. There were the 7 songs from the movie, A Hard Day's Night, Tell Me Why, I'll Cry Instead, which was supposed to be in the movie, but was taken out of the movie at one point for a reprise of Can't Buy Me Love. This is all in the notes. And, I should have known better. I should have known better. I'm happy just to dance with you. If I fell, and I love her, and of course, Can't Buy Me Love. And going to the impeccable liner notes here that were put together by Beatleologist Bruce Spicer, he says in here specifically about the instrumental tracks, because there were instrumental tracks that were done by George Martin. As United Artists only had 8 Beatle recordings for its soundtrack album, it had to turn to another source for the needed additional tracks. George Martin, who the company had recently signed as a recording artist, Martin provided 4 orchestral arrangements of Beatles songs for the LP. So originally I thought that was stuff that was going to be in the movie, because I heard the music first and then I saw the movie. Only This Boy and the instrumental version of A Hard Day's Night is heard in the movie. Those are the only 2 ones. Now, as an album, it's really not much of an album. You know, the UK album really has a flow to it. This is what it's supposed to be. A soundtrack souvenir album is what it is. The George Martin instrumental tracks do sort of stick out like a sore thumb. The sort of swinging 60s instrumental pop of I should have known better with that, sax solo, slightly corny sax solo that's in there. The overly dramatic And I Love Her. Now, the version of Ringo's theme, or the instrumental version of This Boy, I like that. I like that. And especially with the way it works in the movie. The sort of Dave Brubeck jazzy version, take 5 version of A Hard Day's Night. I like that. I like that. And I don't think George Martin is a bad composer. I'm one of the people who would love a complete George Martin score of the Yellow Submarine, of his score for Yellow Submarine. There's a lot of creative things I think he did in that score. Tapes backwards and stuff like that. I would love just George Martin's score of Yellow Submarine. But, of course, the Beatles songs are great. This is, like I said, some of the best batch of Beatle tunes. This is Beatlemania at the beginning, and you even see it in the movie to this day. There's just a sense of excitement and innocence to the whole deal. That by the time mid-65 with Help, they were kind of getting tired then. And the herbal jazz cigarette and George and John having the dental experience kind of changed them. But here, they're excited. They're having fun with this. They're like, people are screaming at us and giving us all this excitement. What the heck? They're having a laugh, So you can't fault the Beatle tunes. But again, this is just a soundtrack album. Being that it's a soundtrack album, this was a massive, massive seller. I think it may have even sold more than some of the Capitol. I think it was the #1 album of the year. Let me go to Bruce Spicer here for a second. The decision proved to be a wise one, as the United Artists soundtrack album sold 1 million copies within 4 days of its release, quickly rising to the top of the Billboard Top LP charts, where it remained for 14 straight weeks. During its 51 weeks on the charts, this led UA to run an ad proclaiming #1 album in the nation, the fastest selling album ever, the best-selling soundtrack album in history. Total sales would exceed 4 million units. 4 million units. That was a lot back then. This was a lot. So, now again, just like all the other pressings, everything is immaculate on here. Yeah, you got your reproduction of the inner sleeve, and again, this was not done on Capitol. So you have the original United Artists label on this. And this is such an impeccable pressing. There's not a pop or click anywhere. They must have dust busted that pressing plant totally, swept everything away. So that's my thoughts on the Hard Day's Night album released in the U.S. as a soundtrack album. It's a good soundtrack album. It's a good soundtrack album. I'm sure young kids would have liked hearing this from United Artists than the soundtrack to It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, which I used to have on vinyl, by the way. But that's my thoughts on this. Let me know what you think. Drop me a line. And next up will be something new.